Folks, if you've ever seen anyone who presents with a twist in their knee like this, then you definitely want to check out this video. Hello, everybody. Zach Couples, physical therapist here, and today we're going to go over a particular case of an individual who has what appears to be a twist in their knee. That's where you have the top part of the knee going one direction and the bottom part of the leg going in the other. I'm going to break this up into different infrasternal angle presentations because, folks, not everyone's knee twists the same way, even though it looks the same. Today, we're going to look at someone who's got a narrow infrasternal angle presentation with this concomitant knee twist. Let's dive in, shall we? Before we dive into the specific case, we have to look at some generalities behind what's going on when we see a knee that appears twisted. Generally, what this entails is you have the femur somehow turning inward. This is internal rotation. And then you have the tibia turning outward, which is external rotation. And this can happen a wide variety of ways. We're going to look at one specific way today in this case, but there's a lot of potential ways that you can have this twist. For example, I could have the entire femur twist into IR. I can have a twist in the bone distally that creates that internal rotation. That would be like something local. You can have the entire tibia twist into ER. You can have things occur at the foot that create the external rotation of the tibia. Pelvic rotations can also influence the relative positions of the knees. This is especially so if you see someone who has one knee that's twisted in this fashion and the other that isn't. You can also have bony changes that may contribute to this knee twist. Namely, if someone's got tibial torsion or if you start to see some arthritic change locally at the knee. Those could all be potential influences that we may see that can create this twist of the tibia. Let's now dive into Jason, who is a narrow infrasternal angle. We're going to take a look at how his knees present, some of his findings, and most importantly, the steps that we can take to untwist this particular presentation's knees. First, I'm going to show you just a view of his knees, just so we can get an appreciation for what he looks like. So if you look on the screen here, the things I want you to pay attention to are where his kneecap is in relationship to his tibia. And so we got kneecap right there, kneecap right there, and then the tibia, which I'm going to make in red. If you look at the tubercles, you see it a little bit more prominent on the left, but it's just a little bit more lateral in comparison to where the center of the kneecap is. And so, in theory, this would indicate that you have a situation where I have the femur internally rotating on either side like this. So that's going to be IR. And then you have a compensatory external rotation of the tibia just like that. Now, it's going to be a bit more magnified when I look at this from the back, but I want to show you just a couple indicators that are pointing to me that we're dealing with someone with this presentation, especially in the tibia. You can notice it in the feet. And so what I want you to look at is the toes, actually. So you're going to look at this space right here. You see how there's a gap between the first and second toe? When you see that gap, what I want you to think is the first ray is plantar flexed. First ray being plantar flexed is basically when you see, so we got a foot right here. This is the base of the big toe or the first metatarsal. Plantar flexion means that it's pointing downward like this, and you'll oftentimes see the big toe extend. When it's plantar flexed, there's more of a gap between the first and second toe in comparison to when it's dorsiflexed, then you get a closure of the foot. Now, when the first ray is plantar flexed, that's oftentimes associated with an inverted calcaneus. This would be a right foot in this case. So inverted calcaneus, first ray is plantar flexed. That makes the arch appear larger, which we're seeing on Jason. You can kind of see if you go back to the picture here, you can see where my pointer is, that you can see some arch height on either side. And so when you have that inverted calcaneus, plantar flexed first ray, that's often indicative that there's an external rotation action occurring in the lower extremity. And so if we're seeing that, those are the signs that we can utilize that will indicate to us that we're dealing with someone who's got external rotation through at least the tibia. Now, we have to look at some other things to see what's going on up higher and how we can determine if we're seeing someone who also has internal rotation in the femoral component. We can see the internal rotation action much more clearly when we look at this from the backside view. So now you can see how the femur is inclined much more inwardly. So if we got Jason's pelvis here, we kind of have this adducted slope, especially on the right, but you also kind of see it on the left as well. So you see how that slope is right there, and then you see kind of a counter rotation, almost like an abduction, if you will, that's going on through the tibia on either side. It appears to be a little bit more pronounced on the left in comparison to the right. So that right there is kind of your sign that you are dealing with this twist. But now here's the deal, folks. You're going to see this, but Jason appears to be someone with a narrow infrasternal angle presentation. And so if we look at him from this particular picture right here, you can kind of see he's a bit of a slender individual. Generally, just by looking at him, and you can especially see that here, you can see how the rib cage isn't like very wide. With a narrow infrasternal angle person, that individual generally has more external rotation available than they do internal rotation. Well, then that doesn't make much sense now, does it? Because Jason appears to have internal rotation going on at the femur. And so we have to tease out where on the femur that is specifically occurring. In order to determine that, we're going to actually look at some of Jason's measures. And I'm going to show you those right here. So if we go ahead and we'll watch this video right here, we can see that for you supreme clientele. But so there's his right straight leg raise. That's about 60 degrees, nothing, maybe a little bit more, 65. And then the left is a little bit less, but you see how he's having a difficult time keeping the knee straight, which is why I think that would be even lower, right? If he kept the knee straight, he'd probably be at 50, 60. Same thing here. Left side's even less. That appears to be 50, but then you can kind of see the knee bend. So it's probably not even at that amount. So there we have a limited straight leg raise. Check this out. Toe touch. Boom, right there. Also pretty limited, can't touch his toes. You'll notice that he's got some knee bend here, so he can't keep knee extension. Well, that kind of indicates, folks, that we probably have an internal rotation deficit proximally, because being able to perform a straight leg raise with the knee straight as well as with the toe touch, those both indicate one's ability to internally rotate more proximally. Jason can't do that. So what we likely have is a loss of external rotation proximally at the femur, but then distally, we're starting to see a counter twist at the knee, and that's why you see the knees caving in. You can especially see that counter twist in this picture right here. Notice how Jason's knees are both pointing, or not his knees, excuse me, his feet are both pointing inward, but this hook lying position is more of an external rotation bias. So really what you're seeing is you're seeing the orientation occur from the distal knee down. To illustrate this even further, I'm now going to draw this out for you on a diagram so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's my very poorly drawn schematic of a knee. And so what I'm saying we have going on with Jason, most likely, is we have the proximal femur in external rotation. And this would be a right, but you could mirror this on either side realistically. And then you also have the tibia externally rotating as well. And we saw that with some of the foot stuff that I had discussed, among other things. But then what you get, and this is where you get this knee presentation, is you get the distal femur internally rotating, and that's why you have the twist that we see when we're looking at the knees. Now, if we go back to just another picture of his feet, you'll notice that they're not perfectly symmetrical right here, so you can kind of see that right there. Notice how the gap appears a bit larger on his left in comparison to his right. And then you can also see that magnified as well when we look at his legs from the back. Kind of looks like we might have more of that tibial external rotation on the left side, given the prominence of the calf laterally. And then it looks like, I would say that it appears that the knee on the left might be a little bit more internally rotated. And so what's going on there? I'm glad you asked. What's likely going on there is we're seeing the beginning stages of a flat or a longitudinal turn through the pelvis. What's a longitudinal turn through the pelvis? Well, I'll show you. Basically, if I have someone who's got a narrow infrasternal angle, sacrum is going to be a bit more counternutated. And then what's going to happen with that is I'm going to push the left side forward and pull the right side back to some extent. And the reason why I'm calling it a longitudinal turn is because the axis that the pelvis is going to be turning on is the longitudinal one. And so it looks more like that. And so then what happens in that case is if the left innominate's going a bit more forward, that's going to create an internal rotation orientation through the left leg. So it'll magnify what appears to be the internal rotation measure, and you start seeing a drop-off of external rotation. Conversely, on the right side, you get the flip of that. So instead, now the external rotation gets magnified, but the internal rotation drops off. And this is proximally. And so what we're likely seeing because of that is that turn manifesting based on some of the asymmetrical presentations that we're looking at. Cool story, Zach. So what the heck do we do about it? Is he just screwed? Is he doomed to have twisted knees forever? Forever, ever? Forever, ever? Probably not. What I think we can do instead is we have to address the proximal influences first and foremost. So making sure that we restore the hip positioning that we need, address the longitudinal turn, and then we can work on local strategies to help untwist the knee. So for that, we're going to follow a sequence to address the flat turn representation that we're seeing, which again, likelihood that this is happening is also based on the asymmetry in the straight leg raise that we saw, being that left was worse than right. So we'll address that first, and then we'll work on strategies to help untwist the knee, which will involve driving tibial internal rotation and distal femur external rotation. When we're talking about addressing someone with a longitudinal or flat turn, there's a 4-step sequence that I've been utilizing to address that. First thing we're going to do is stack. And the reason why we want to stack is because that is a fundamental concept that we're going to utilize to increase the dynamical capabilities of the pelvis, thorax, all of that. And so what I might choose for that in this particular situation, given that we're dealing with a narrow infrasternal angle, is the quadruped position. In the quadruped position, because I'm at 90 degrees of hip flexion, that's going to get me internal rotation. Being in quadruped is going to help expand the ventral cavity really laterally, which someone who's a narrow infrasternal angle needs. So that's a good starting point. Once we've achieved the stack, then we're going to go after expanding the left posterior pelvis. And the reason why we need to do that is because we need to increase space to turn the pelvis left in two. If I don't have external rotation, then I can't turn left. For that, I like using a short lever baby roll going to the left, because when I do that, I'm teaching that particular individual to create a left rotation, which is going to increase external rotation, and I want to do so with as little tension as humanly possible. From there, then we're going to start activities that are going to increase internal rotation capabilities on the right. For that, I like utilizing hip approximation activities. So what you're doing in this video here is you're pushing the right foot on the ground with the knee bent. That's actually going to help untwist the knee to some extent, because when I bend the knee and I press down on the right side, that's going to get me tibial internal rotation and distal femur external rotation. Because I'm pressing in the ground, I can increase internal rotation occurring on the right, and then I'm going to hike the left hip up, and that's going to help increase external rotation space on the left. And then the last thing that I'm going to do for the flat turn is I want to keep the pelvis oriented right and then turn it into the left. For that, I can utilize a quadruped hip shift to elicit that goal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the right knee down, pull the left hip up, and if we do that, no one should mess with this person. Now, all of those things in that sequence, and you might not do it all in one session, right? You want to kind of make sure the person can stack, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, and you use your measures to guide you. But once you've done that, things are looking good. If we still notice that the knee appears a bit twisted, or there's some concomitant restrictions along with that, then I might do something locally. For that, especially in this individual, I'm going to utilize a half kneeling reaching series. For the half kneeling reaching series, I like this because in half kneeling, that's going to increase internal rotation proximally, which as a narrow ISA, you kind of sort of need that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive the pronation and twist the knee out. So then we reverse the orientation that we discussed. I'm getting distal femur external rotation, I'm getting tibial internal rotation, and then the proximal femur is also going to be internally rotating. So really, if you kind of look at the initial schematic that we had for Jason, with that last move in particular, I'm flipping all the arrows. So now I got a femur that's internally rotating proximally, and I got a tibia that's also internally rotating. And then the nice thing is I'm going to be driving the external rotation through the distal femur. And if we do that, there's a good chance that we're going to get the movement improvements that we oh so desire for this particular individual. And there you have it, folks. That's how we would untwist this particular individual's knee. Did you find that useful, or are you thinking like, man, that was kind of cool, but I'm not really sure how to coach some of these moves? Well, I can help you solve that problem if you come to my seminar, Human Matrix, because not only will you learn how to perform an assessment just like we did on these individuals, but you're going to learn how to choose exercises and coach exercises that should help increase someone's available movement, which can be helpful for helping your clients get out of pain and also getting the most out of their fitness program. If you're watching this in 2022, we have 3 dates currently available in this year to be able to teach this seminar. We're going to be in Boston, August 6th and 7th. We're going to be in Slovenia in October 15th and 16th. And we're also going to be in New Jersey on November 12th and 13th. If you want to sign up for that, check me out at zachcouples.com/seminars. If you found case studies like this useful, or you got a case where you're like, I'm not really sure how I want to tackle this, you can go ahead and check me out at zachcouples.com and go ahead and fill out one of the forms in any of the pages, and I should be able to help you on that front. Also, while you're here, please hit the like and subscribe button because it helps the fam keep growing. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. You've been an incredible, outstanding audience, and I hope that you keep it real but not to some things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.